Yo, 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 what is going on, guys? My name is Tyler. I'm one of the FF mediators here at Face Off. I'm back with my week 11 tight end rankings. Uh, we'll start off real quick with the buys for this coming week, right? We've got Indianapolis, obviously, which means no Tyler Warren. And we also have the Saints, who are also on bye this coming week. So that also means no Jawan Johnson, who has been sneakily good the last few weeks if you haven't been paying attention. But since those guys are no longer in our categories here that we can use this week, let's actually pop up our first graphic here for tier one. And we'll start talking about my tight ends here in tier one this week. And we've got Trey McBride. Obviously, if you watched the games this past week, he had an amazing week. 13 total targets, 9 catches for 127 yards and a touchdown. He's easily the tight end one on the year so far. Jacoby will remain the quarterback for the Cardinals with Kyler on IR. So I think it's just wheels up here. I did see where news came out that Marvin Harrison did have a surgery for appendicitis. He's out at least this week, guys. So, and maybe another week afterwards. And if I'm not mistaken, I almost think Zay Jones also may have went down with an injury. Not 100% sure on that one, but I do know for a fact that Marv is out this coming week. Number two here, we had the return of George Kittle, like an actual decent performance here this week. He had 9 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown. He's had 3 touchdowns in his 5 active games this year. So that's something to just kind of monitor. He's not been, super touchdown dependent. And like I said, he's the tight end 2 here this past week. He's the tight end 28 overall, but he's only been active for 5 out of the 10 games so far. And then last here is probably the name everybody's like, why would you put him here after last week? And that's Brock Bowers. Now, yes, I'll go ahead and tell you, Brock Bowers had a disappointing performance in just a horrendous Thursday night game. They played the Broncos. It was a 10-7 game. Neither team could really get any offense going, it seemed. And Brock Bowers ended up with 1 catch for 31 yards. It's really tough, right? Like Denver's a tough matchup against tight ends. They're a pretty good defense in general. And Geno's not really been that consistent. He's been very inconsistent so far this year. So it's going to be a little difficult as we move forward with Brock Bowers, but his tight end prowess that he's had both at Georgia and last year as a rookie in the NFL, he's shown his talent. He's shown that he is an elite talent. And so just for that reason, I'm going to continue to put him here in tier one because he's one of those guys that can have a Trey McBride week, a George Kittle week, any week that he gets the chance. So really and truthfully, there's still no threats out wide. You've got Trey Tucker there who had the one game earlier in the year. But none of the rookies are standing out. So Brock Bowers is still the number one option on this offense. And I'm more than willing to continue to treat him as such and just put him in my lineup. Moving on to tier two here. You'll see the man on the thumb here or on the graphic is Oronde Gadsden. We'll get to him in a minute as to why he is at the bottom. But let's start with Sam Laporta. Here at 4 for me, yes, he's taking on Philly, and you'll see Goddard, who is also in this tier. So they're playing each other this coming week. Laporta has been very steady, guys. He had 5 catches for 53 yards this past week. He's hit 5 receptions and targets in 4 out of his last 5 games. So just some stats, yes, it's a difficult matchup, but he has been consistent. And if I'm not mistaken, Dan Campbell actually took over the play calling this coming week. And so you saw J-Mo get a little more involved. You saw Gibbs have a good week. You saw Laporta still being used at that rate. So I truly think this offense is just going to continue to be high-powered like it has been. Yes, it's a difficult matchup, but I do want to go ahead and tell you this is going to be Sam Laporta's hardest matchup for the rest of the season. His schedule the rest of the season is great. If I go back and, I play on sleeper in most of my leagues, he has 2 orange matchups, and then all the rest of them are green after that. His 2 orange matchups being the Giants and Dallas, who I'm not super worried about right now. So we will see. I think Sam Laporta is a sneaky good play. Um, at least I think he's sneaky because people tend to sleep on him, and that's why I have him here in tier 2. But we will continue nonetheless. Now, Jake Ferguson, I'm going to give you a little bit of a vote of confidence here for Ferg. He is the tight end 3 on the season after his hot start. Now, yes, since coming back, like since CD has came back, it's been kind of tough for him. He's not done great, and George Pickens has really picked up that slack. I've seen some stats where it was like George Pickens was like 4th in total yards at the wide receiver position, and so I was really hoping that Pickens would be the one to take the hit when it came back to targets and such whenever CD returned. But it looks like it's been Ferg. However, you know where he was averaging 9.6 targets, the first 5 weeks, the last 4 he's still averaging 4.5. He's very touchdown reliant at this point, but I told you that, we had Goddard here next. I trust the Dallas offense more than I trust the Philly offense at this point. And so for me, that's why I have Jake Ferguson ranked here, even against Vegas, who, sure, it says they're the 5th worst matchup for tight ends, but I really and truthfully think it's similar to like the Titans in the sense that their offense is so unpredictable that most of the time they can't keep up. And so people just stop throwing the ball. But I think Ferg gets involved here early and often. And then, like I said, he's a little bit more boom bust now than he was at the start of the season, but I'm giving you a vote of confidence here coming off of the bye. Now, we've got Dallas Goedert here. Obviously, he's getting ready to take on Detroit, 15th best against tight ends. So he had 4 catches, still 6 targets, and for 43 yards this past week. No touchdowns this week. And something I just wanted to look because, obviously I've been more skeptical of Dallas Goddard as the year has went on. When he first started, I was like, he's very touchdown dependent. I don't like that. Like, I like more stability at the position. Obviously, if you get those elite guys, great. You've got both the stability and some upside. But Dallas Goddard, to me, was a little bit more of an upside shot than stability. And so I went back and I looked, and even though he was used at a slow or like didn't have the best fantasy performance this past week, right? He wasn't used as much. If you go back and you actually look at the total offensive numbers, right? Jalen Hurts threw the ball 26 times. Dallas Goddard had 6 targets. So that means he had a 23% target share. Yes, he's still volatile. Hurts only completed 15 passes, and 4 of those were to Goddard. So, really and truthfully, he's still producing at a decent rate. Yes, he's a little volatile. If he doesn't score the touchdowns, he's not going to have those huge weeks. But I look forward to him. I mean, he's the tight end 6 on the year with 7 touchdowns. I mean, anytime you're able to score touchdowns at the tight end position, it's automatically going to propel you over those that aren't necessarily close to you. So you continue to play Dallas Goddard. He's here in my tier 2. And then the last name that I talked about, and he's on the graphic, and that's Oronde Gadsden. Now, there was a scary moment in the third quarter where he went down, and I was like, no, we can't lose another tight end. We had already lost Tucker Kraft, who was one of my darlings in the offseason, and I really like Gadsden coming out. And then he's had his breakout here these past few weeks and really impressed some people. And then he was getting ready to take on Jacksonville this week, the 31st ranked against tight ends. And I was like, man, this is going to be a great week. And then he went out and got hurt last week. Now, they did do an MRI. It came back that it was just a bruised quad. So he's day to day. Now, yes, you keep an eye on that and you monitor it. So that's the reason why he's at the bottom of my tier 2 here. It's more like a little asterisk there of, hey, just monitor this. Obviously, if he doesn't play, then, you don't play him. If he goes into it, limited practices all week, he's definitely moving down my board. But I'm using this as he's going to play. I'm putting him here with the injury risk baked in. And then if he was fully healthy, I'm more than happy to move him up probably above Ferguson and just behind Laporta for me, maybe even just barely edging out Laporta. So we'll see. Just keep an eye out on the practice reports this coming week and see where Gadsden kind of lands. Now to tier 3. Tier 3 here is a pretty big tier for me this week. A lot of these guys I view very similarly. They're getting targets. They're soaking up targets. Now, yes, I've got Kelsey here. He just came off of the bye, and you're like, why would you put him here whenever he's not drawing the same amount of targets these other guys are? The real reason is you've got Rashee Rice, yes, but he's probably gonna take the coverage away of Patrick Surtain from Denver, who they play this week. So that's going to open up your short and intermediates. Maybe Travis Kelsey has a little bit more of involvement here. He's still the tight end 5 on the season, so I'm not writing Travis Kelsey off yet. In terms of fantasy, I think if you have him, at least for redraft, he's producing it at a great clip for you. So you continue to play Travis Kelsey where you have him. Now, this is one of my guys last week. He was on my graphic for tier 4 last week, and I brought him up, and that's Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz getting ready to take on Tennessee, which, like I said earlier, isn't necessarily a great matchup, but I think it's just because the offense, the other side's offense, isn't great. This past week with Davis Mills, who absolutely balled out. I think he was, if he wasn't the quarterback 1 on the week, he was definitely in the top 5 for sure. With Davis Mills, had 7 catches, 11 targets, 53 yards, and a touchdown. That nobody expected that from Davis Mills. I mean, you can tell me you expected that. I had some places where I had CJ Stroud that was out, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have to pick up Davis Mills and play him because nobody else, like all the other quarterbacks, were taken. And he came through in a big way for me. I still ended up losing that matchup, but it's okay. I mean, I was a whole lot more competitive than I thought I would be. With that being said, back to Dalton Schultz. He has had, let's see, 5 catches and 50-plus yards in 4 of the last 5 games. Obviously, with both Stroud and Davis Mills, he's being targeted heavily in the offense right now. He's the number 2 offense or option behind Nico Collins in this offense. Whether you want to agree or not, and I don't think it's up for debate. Christian Kirk hasn't shown a lot. Jaden Higgins has been involved a little bit. Jalen Noel will be involved here and there. He's kind of more used in the return game. But I think truly you've got Nico, you've got Dalton Schultz, and then Woody Marks is kind of breaking on the scene. We'll see how that breaks out. But I think Schultz is a great play at tight end this coming week. Really, really and truthfully, the 2 questions are, can Tennessee keep up, and is CJ Stroud back? The CJ Stroud conversation is I'm a little bit less worried about after this past week. I'm mainly concerned about can Tennessee keep up, but typically these divisional games, especially in the AFC South, are really close. So I think it'll be a pretty good game this coming week. I think Schultz will have another good game. Popping my graphic back up here, you'll see at tight end 10, I've got Cade Otton here. He had a career high in both receptions and targets this past week. 9 catches, 12 targets for 82 yards. Now, the reason he is down here is because they're taking on Buffalo, who is the number 1 defense against tight ends so far. They have made it very difficult on offenses to use the tight end position, and I think they'll do that here this week. Now, as of right now, it's Cade Otton and Igbuka as receivers. I have seen practice reports that Godwin is trying to have a limited practice, like they were participating in walkthroughs and such. It also looks like Bucky is participating in walkthroughs, Bucky Irving, the running back there. So keep those in mind. Maybe they come back. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think it's probably more likely that they get some practice in and then play next week. But we will see how that kind of turns out. Theo Johnson had 2 touchdowns this past week. I think he only had like 4 catches in total, and 2 of them were touchdowns. Those could easily go Cade Otton's way. So to me, I'm playing Cade Otton with some confidence here. Even against Buffalo, as you'll see here, I've got 2 names below him. He's not the end of this tier. And then obviously my streamers are coming up here shortly. So let's scoot down here one more to Kyle Pitts here, taking on Carolina, another divisional game coming up this week. This past week, he had 2 catches for 38 yards, nothing great. But that being said, Michael Penix only completed 12 passes in an overtime game where the Colts ended up winning thanks to Jonathan Taylor and the beast of a season he is having. Out of those 12 passes, Drake London caught 6. So, really and truthfully, there's just not a lot to go around here in Atlanta. And so, if you have a bad offensive game like that, you saw it was an overtime game where they had to score points and they still couldn't do it. They could not complete the passes. That's why Pitts is falling down here. He's had more involvement throughout the year, and he's been consistent with it in my eyes. Um, he's the tight end 17 so far, but I mean, really and truthfully, he's got the talent. We like the target consolidation. You just need to see a better offensive output. And then last in this tier is Colston Loveland. Now, Colston Loveland is interesting for me for a few reasons. This past week, 4 catches for 55 yards. So wasn't the best offensive performance, especially following up last week. Now, in the last 3 games, he has went 13 catches on 16 targets for 211 yards and 2 touchdowns. That tells me that they are starting to trend in the rookie's direction in terms of passing work, which is what we really care about for fantasy, right? And so Komet, I feel like, is becoming more limited to that blocking role. I think he had 1 catch. Let me see. Did I write it down? Yeah, 1 catch for 5 yards. That's all he had this past week. DJ Moore, I'm pretty sure, is injured. He goosed you. Roma Dunze had a comeback week, and they got Luther Burden a little more involved. So yes, there's other weapons there, but I believe they're starting to trust Loveland over Cole Kmet. So I would be keeping an eye out for that, to where he may break onto the scene here and have some more weeks where he's got some touchdown potential for us. And then last but not least, this is my streaming tier, where tier 4, it's my tight ends 13 through 24. So you'll see that here I've got Theo Johnson on my graphic. Real quick, before we talk about Theo, I want to talk about Harold Fannin, who I have at 13. He's the only guy I have ahead of him. Getting ready to take on Baltimore, which is the 11th best defense against tight ends. Fannin still had 7 targets this past week. Even with Njoku back, he's being targeted at a good rate. He only had 4 catches for 44 yards. So in terms of putting points on the board, no, he didn't have a great week. But he is being targeted. He's played 60% of the snaps in every game, regardless. And so even with Njoku there, he's still being targeted heavily. He will continue to be targeted heavily. And these stats right here actually came from the little sleeper blurb in his profile, and I just found them so impressive that I had to share them with you. So, among all rookie wide receivers and tight ends, not just tight ends, so all rookie pass catchers, okay, Harold Fannin is 5th in yards with 396. He's 3rd in receptions with 42, and he's 4th in targets among all wide receivers and tight ends. So you get to thinking about it, and you're like, okay, well, obviously Egbuka's ahead of him, right? He's got the target volume. And then you start going down the list, and you very quickly will get to Harold Fannin and how involved he has been in Cleveland. Those are the people that you want to play. I've had Harold Fannin ranked higher than Njoku since earlier in the season. For a lot of times, I would have them closely ranked, sometimes back to back, especially early in the season. But once the breakout started, I ended up getting it to where Harold Fannin could even be a tier above. But this week, just because the overall offense for Cleveland, they're both here in my tier 4. Then we're going to talk about Theo Johnson. So I've got a little asterisk by his name here because I wanted to make sure I talked about him, and it's also a little dependent on the quarterback situation. Now, Jackson Dart went out with a concussion this past week, but in doing so, Theo still had 7 catches on 8 targets for 75 yards. And really and truthfully, the biggest news, obviously besides Jackson Dart's concussion, is Brian Daboll was fired. Um, Now, do I think that makes this team worse? Yes. Like in the interim, in the short term, I think that makes them worse. So we will see how his progress continues. But the one thing that I did see, because I had written down here, maybe Russ starts, right? It's actually been confirmed now that it's Jameis Winston, which if you've ever kept up with Jameis Winston's fantasy production, he loves to chuck the ball. So for me, I think Theo is in a good spot for me. I think I'm still playing him behind Fannin just because of the volatility of the offense in general, but I think he's high enough in my streamers. I'd be willing to play him over pretty much anybody else. Um, with that being said, the offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, I think, went to be the interim head coach. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the tight ends coach is actually going to be the new OC. So you've got a tight end coach that's moving to OC. You've got the previous OC that's used Theo Johnson a lot, moving to the head coaching position. So I think his involvement will continue. We'll just have to see how this offense looks. Yes, Jameis is known to chuck the ball a lot, which can cause turnovers. It can also cause huge fantasy weeks. So it's, like I said, more volatile, but I think Theo will be a good play, even with Jackson Dart out. Now, back to our rankings here. You can pause the video. You can see everybody. I'm just going to talk about two more players. One being Zach Ertz. I've been telling people since Marcus Mariota started, I don't want any part of Zach Ertz. The only reason he's as high as he is this week is because he's getting ready to take on Miami, who is 30th against tight ends. He tied the team for the lead in receptions and targets, which it was his best game with Marcus Mariota this past week as the tight end 16, like fantasy wise. He's had 4 targets in the last 5 games, which isn't necessarily a great number, especially whenever you don't have a high powered offense. And Jaden Daniels is out. He's not even going to travel to, I think it's Madrid this coming week with the Commanders. So he's not even going to be on the field at any point. And so you're going to have Marcus Mariota again. I think he could be an okay start against Miami, but that's the only reason I have him ranked here at 17. And then last but not least is AJ Barner, who was down at 21. Now, he had a full goose last week. I'm not going to excuse that in terms of his production. They used him rushing the ball a few times. But if you watch that Seattle game, you know as well as I do, it was like the game started, JSN scored, and then you blinked and it was 35-0 before the end of the first half. So that game got out of hand very quickly. There was 2 defensive touchdowns. And then Sam Darnold only threw 12 passes. So if anytime you have a quarterback that only throws the ball 12 times, obviously their pass catchers are going to suffer. Now, AJ Barner didn't even get a target. They were using him, like I said, more in the rush game. And then other than that, they didn't really have to throw the ball that much. And when they do, it's like JSN is always open. They just throw him the ball and it goes, with that pretty smooth. So 38 total points in the first half for the Seahawks. Obviously, you're hoping they get involved there, but I'm not writing it off yet. They're getting ready to take on the Rams. They're gonna have to keep up there. That's a divisional game. We said those are close multiple times in this video. So I look for that to happen. I look for him to be involved this week. I'm not gonna call it a touchdown guarantee, but I've got a feeling he probably gets in the end zone this week. I think they'll have to keep it close, especially with the Rams who are on fire offensively right now. But like I said, go back. If you have any questions about my tiers where I have people ranked, drop them down below in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel as I do these every week. I keep you up to date with who's out on buys. Keep you up to date with what these tight ends did last week. And then where I have them ranked this week and give you a little bit of context. Some people like to look just at a list and say, okay, here's what I've got. But some people are more interested in the fact of, oh, why does he have Dallas Goedert here versus such and such has him as a top 3? Like for me, I just think context is important. And so with that being said, like I said, I do these every week. If you like the video, like I said, feel free to like and comment down below. We do have a free Discord. The link will be in the description, so feel free to tap in there. We're always in there answering questions. And without anything else, I will see you guys next.